So I've seen episode 8 of The Acolyte. I finished it, and I've seen there's a lot of backlash to it. I wasn't looking online while I was watching the show, and now I am, and I think I understand the grievances that some people have with it. Now, I am not the most devoted of Star Wars fans. I haven't read, like, the Darth Plagueis novel and read the comics. Like, the deepest it goes for me is I watched the original trilogy special editions a lot when I was a kid on VHS. And then I watched the prequels quite a few times. But I was in that awkward generation right in between the prequel hate and the prequel love. And so, I mean, I just kind of saw them as they were there. And, they were a part of Star Wars. And so, I've seen Clone Wars, I saw Rebels. I've seen a lot of it. But I wouldn't say it's my main thing. My main thing is Doctor Who, as you can see. But I also really love Star Trek. And I think there's an interesting parallel as to what is happening with Star Wars. It happened to Star Trek many years ago. So, George Lucas, he believed that the light side of the Force was good. And that was the moral peak. While I think a lot of newer writers who've been working on Star Wars, because of the moral ambiguity of the Jedi in the prequel trilogy, have taken that as invitation to extend the philosophy of light side versus dark side, and almost going into sort of the gray Jedi philosophy that a balance of the Force is light and dark, not just light. Now, I liken this to how Gene Roddenberry, in Star Trek, he did not like the direction things were going with Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. As soon as he died, as soon as he was no longer involved in the franchise, a lot of people say that's when Star Trek stepped it up a level. And that was where they found their next cultural identity in TNG, DS9, Voyager, in the Berman era of Star Trek, as it is called. And I think Star Wars, since it's not quite as massive when it comes to the number of stories that have been told in a visual medium, I think it's reaching that renaissance right now. I don't know whether or not it's right, but what I do know is I did find The Acolyte Season 1 fascinating, and I find the reaction to The Acolyte very fascinating, because it shows me that Star Wars, the fandom itself, is in a place of transition. My thinking is, something like this should have happened 10 years ago when Disney got Star Wars. They shouldn't have made the sequel trilogy. Instead, they should have just gone straight with something completely detached from the Skywalker name. Like, if I were a Disney person, that's what I'd do. Because why would you want to risk angering perhaps the most passionate group of fans? Yeah, I mean, it really does feel like they were tempting fate by that being the first thing they did. They could make a lot of money off of, doing stuff which was tangentially created and, kind of almost stringing people along, sort of like what they're doing with the end of The Acolyte this season. Like small, subtle hints and thematic callbacks, but not direct continuations. I feel like that would have been a much smarter way for them to go at first, and perhaps define the philosophy of their Star Wars first, because I feel like the sequels had no philosophy, no consistent philosophy, I should say. Each movie was trying to say something different, and that gave the trilogy tonal and moral whiplash. But yeah, I'm fascinated to see what goes on with Star Wars in the future.